Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. Tyrone 217, Fermanagh 210. Tyrone get the job done at Brewster Park and they progress into the quarterfinals of the Ulster Senior Football Championship. I mean, it was very well expected, let's be perfectly honest. I mean, Tyrone going in as significant favourites, going in as the All-Ireland champions. Every dog on the street very much knew that Tyrone were more than likely going to win this game. Fair play to Fermanagh. Look, listen, they gave a good account of themselves in the first half. And, with a little bit more quality, I feel that, they might have been more so in the game. You could see they create a couple of goal chances in the first half, a couple of goal chances in the second half. Definitely a couple of worries there from a Tyrone perspective. Definitely a few defensive issues in there, actually, as a matter of fact. We've seen that throughout the league at times. We've seen it just a little bit in this game as well, how easily Fermanagh's attack were able to open up that Tyrone defence, and that certainly will be a worry. But Tyrone get the job done. They go through to the Ulster quarter-finals. Smash the like button if you're a member of the channel or whatever you want to say, if you're a subscriber, or if you're new to the channel, do subscribe. Let's get into it. Yeah, so as we were saying there, Fermanagh 210, Tyrone 217, they progress on into the next round of the Ulster Championship. They progress on into the Ulster quarter-finals. Look, listen, I suppose breaking down the game, discussing the big moments, the big talking points. I mean, first of all, obviously in the first half, I felt that, Fermanagh acquitted themselves quite well. They were able to stay in the game. They were doing well on their own kickouts. Tyrone were a little bit sloppy at times, just a few loose passes. Didn't have that cutting edge really in front of goal, and they weren't really getting in the faces of Fermanagh. They looked like they hadn't really got out of third gear at all. They were definitely targeting Fermanagh's right-hand side, make no mistake about it. And you've seen Conor McKenna with some of those overlapping runs from time to time, which is obviously where the Tyrone goal came from. Definitely was causing a couple of issues. And certainly for Fermanagh, that was something they needed to address, obviously, going into the second half. But largely, I felt like they acquainted themselves quite well. You know, they had a 3-point lead at one stage in the first half, 5 points to 2, I think it was. And they were looking good. And I always felt like Tyrone were going to step it up a gear at some point. Like, you were never really worried for Tyrone, really. You could see, really, the levels between the two teams. Like, when Fermanagh were creating goal chances, the quality wasn't quite there. They didn't quite back themselves. It felt like enough. Like, even in the first half, there was a half goal chance really for Conal Jones. He could have played it into Darren McGurn, who was just right beside the post, but he ended up putting it over the bar. So for Fermanagh, there were a couple of opportunities there where they could have went for goals. They could have went for opportunities. Just the quality just wasn't quite there. Darren McGurn hits the post at one stage in the second half as well. And you felt like with Tyrone, once they would step it up and once they would get going, you felt like they would gain control, and really that was where the second half or where they really sort of stepped into it. And as we were saying there, Conor McKenna was brilliant from a Tyrone perspective. Brilliant goal, obviously takes his goal very well, and it came at a crucial time in the game as well, because Fermanagh were certainly on top in the first half, and that goal and a point just before half time by Darren McCurry. It just gave Tyrone that bit of edge, right, where they haven't been good enough in the first half, but they're a point up. And they know if they take control in the second half, they should have enough to see the game through. And as I was saying there, you could see sort of the differences between the two teams in terms of Tyrone obviously being All-Ireland champions, a Division 1 team, and Fermanagh being a Division 3 team. Like, conditioning-wise, you could just see it a mile off, really, even in the second half. Even though Fermanagh got themselves 2 goals towards the end to make the scoreline a little bit more respectable, you still felt like Tyrone looked very, very comfortable. And this game probably could have gone on an extra 20 to 25 minutes, and Tyrone just would have been managing it perfectly. And the second half was definitely where Tyrone done their damage. I mean, Fermanagh who obviously kicked the first point of the second half from Darren McGurn, but Tyrone after that they're kicking, I think, 7 or 8. I think they had 1-6 or 1-7 without reply just in that third quarter of the game, and that was obviously the big turning point. And bringing Conor McKenna off the bench, who obviously gets sent off as well towards the end of the game. He made a massive difference. He really did. Caused all sorts of problems for Fermanagh. Getting in behind as well was on the end of a lot of those attacks. Obviously hits the post, comes back out. Liam Rafferty puts it into the back of the net, and from there on in, you knew it was game over. Really, Fermanagh probably struggled to get Sean Quigley in the game in the second half. He didn't quite, probably have the influence as maybe what Fermanagh fans would have liked to see. But look, fair play to Fermanagh. Look, they kept battling. They kept going at it. They obviously get 2 goals in the final 5 minutes of the game. One from Josh Largo Ellis, the other from Conal Jones as well. And Fermanagh, made the game a little bit more respectable, I suppose you could say, in terms of the scoreline. Plenty of comments coming in here. Sharon says, I didn't watch the game, but I heard Tyrone were sloppy in the first half, but it was never in doubt. Yeah, they were sloppy enough, like a few passes here or there, but I think it's one of those things where, look, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and I like, for a Tyrone fan, maybe you'll be a little bit worried about the second half, or about the goals obviously conceded and a few defensive issues and whatnot, but at the same time, you would expect Tyrone to improve, and you think they definitely have the quality to go on. And obviously they're playing Derry next, and after that maybe a Monaghan potentially, then a Ulster final. It's a long way to go. So you've seen All-Ireland champions, big teams in the past before, Dublin even as well, where maybe in these kind of early games they're not looking sparkling at their best, but they don't necessarily need to be. So yeah, they just definitely didn't get into the game. Rory McGuire says, wouldn't exactly say cruised. I mean, I think they kind of did, though, really, in the second half. Like, those 2 goals at the end made it a 7-point game, but without those 2 goals, it would have been a 13-point game. So Tyrone were very, very comfortable, in my opinion, in the second half. They hit 1-7, 1-8 without reply. So it was fairly comfortable. Those 2 goals just definitely probably made a bit more of a competitive game. In terms of the red card for Conor McKenna, I think it was the right decision, really. Like, you can see there, he's involved in the melee. He obviously involved in the altercation. I think pushes over 2 players. You can see him on top of 1 player at one point. He's obviously given a yellow card. It wasn't like he was given a straight red. So second yellow card, fair decision there in the end. And obviously 2 other players booked as well. I mean, he probably could have booked more. It's one of them things where there's so many players involved. You kind of wonder who like, how are they making the decisions of booking certain players and not booking others. But I do think it was the right decision in the end, and would be, obviously having him missing will be a problem maybe for Tyrone going into that game against Derry. Will they be able to appeal it? We'll obviously have to wait and see. Sometimes these decisions get overturned, sometimes they don't. You just don't really know what's going to go on. Sir Klopp says Tyrone against Monaghan in quarter final. It's actually Tyrone versus Derry in the quarterfinals, but Monaghan played down, so you would expect Monaghan to come through that, and then those 2, whether Tyrone beat Derry, then it would be Tyrone versus Monaghan in the semi-finals. But yeah, so I suppose in the end, to wrap up, comfortable enough for Tyrone. Really didn't get out of third gear in the first half. Certainly didn't. They were probably playing a 50%, 60%, but when they needed to step it up, when they needed to get the job done and win the game, they certainly did in the second half. And look, I think the main positive from Tyrone will be, they had a lot of different scorers on the day. Like, Canavan kicked a point, McShane kicked 2, McCurry with 6, Sludden with 2, McGeary, Brian Kennedy, Con Kilpatrick, who were actually playing a much more advanced role, as they were talking about in Sky Sports there, playing on the edge of the square. So that was definitely an interesting way of going about it from Tyrone. Conor Moyler, obviously, with a goal. Michael Conroy, who came off with a point, or came on. Liam Rafferty, Conor McKenna. So, from Tyrone, they'll be very happy with their scores. And look, for Fermanagh, they can take some pride in their performance. I think, look, they are going up against the All-Ireland champions. It was always going to be very difficult for them. And look, it wasn't like they were hammered by 15 to 20 points or anything like that. So they'll take a bit of confidence. They played very well in the first half. Darren McGurn, I thought, was very lively from Fermanagh. He was a part of almost everything that Fermanagh done right. Great hold-up play and setting up the likes of Quigley and Conal Jones for scores. So I thought he was impressive, but looking at it in total there, Ryan Lyons as well was very good in the first half, 3 points from him. But yeah, I think conditioning wise, you could just see in the second half, Fermanagh just massively faded, whereas Tyrone, stepped it up a gear. So, but yeah, I suppose for Fermanagh, they will go into the Tailteann Cup. So we'll see what happens with them there. Look, I think, you've seen in Division 3 with the way that a lot of the teams were all very even. I think, there'll be a lot of teams will fancy their chances in the Tailteann Cup, and Fermanagh will certainly feel that they have a big opportunity. We'll wrap this up here. Sir Klopp says, shout out to the lads, to the Sligo lads on the session tonight in Times Square. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you might as well make the most of it. I mean, lovely little trip away to New York. Not too bad indeed. But yeah, we'll wrap this up here anyway. If you could smash the like button, subscribe if you're new. Fair play to Fermanagh, fair play to Tyrone for getting the victory, and I'll see you all in the next one.